Welcome to today's deep dive. If you take a second to just imagine the space right outside our atmosphere, you might picture an empty void.
Yeah, just total emptiness.
Right. But right above your head is actually this invisible, bustling highway of technology.
And today we've pulled together a massive stack of sources for you. We've got declassified historical documents, orbital mechanics research papers, and recent telecom industry reports.
Exactly. Our mission is to trace the rapid evolution of satellites across four distinct eras, taking this technology from a wild science fiction dream all the way to the massive mega constellations we rely on today.
It really is an incredible leap when you look at the timeline.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. We actually have to start in 1945, the theoretical era. This is before a single piece of hardware ever left the atmosphere.
Right, when sci-fi author Arthur C. Clarke theorized using geostationary orbits for global radio.
A concept so visionary it's still referred to as the Clarke orbit today.
What's fascinating here is how incredibly fast that science fiction became hard reality. I mean, we moved right into the space race era. By October 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik 1.
Which is basically just a polished metal sphere with four antennas, right?
Yes, exactly. And for anyone following aerospace history, it wasn't just the launch itself that shocked the Western world. It was the sudden realization of what that simple radio beat meant for global security and technological dominance.
It forced an immediate pivot. The U.S. scrambled and launched Explorer 1 a few months later in January 1958. According to the research we reviewed, this wasn't just a political response.
No, not at all.
Explorer 1 actually discovered the Van Allen radiation belts. I imagine finding a massive zone of intense radiation fundamentally changed the game for engineers, right?
Completely. Before that discovery, orbital mechanics was the main hurdle. But after Explorer 1, suddenly you had to figure out radiation shielding.
Wow.
Yeah, it dictated how long a satellite could survive and how sensitive the onboard electronics could be. It was a massive engineering wake-up call.
And they adapted incredibly fast. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the 1960s were just a rapid-fire decade of firsts.
Oh, absolutely.
You had Explorer 6 snapping the first crude photo of Earth in 1959. Then Telstar 1 gave us live transatlantic TV in '62. And by 1963, SYNCOM 2 actually proved Clarke's geostationary theory right by parking perfectly over one spot on Earth.
Which is brilliant for wide coverage. But as our telecom sources point out, geostationary orbit is about 22,000 miles up. That creates a noticeable delay or latency in signal transmission.
So it was groundbreaking, but it highlighted the inherent physical limits of bouncing signals that far out into space.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you're seeing a fundamental shift in this era, the commercial and scientific expansion spanning the 70s through the 2000s. Satellites morphed from geopolitical flexes into everyday utilities.
Right, like the DoD launching the Navstar GPS constellation in the 70s.
Which completely revolutionized civilian navigation.
And then you have the Hubble Space Telescope in 1990 capturing deep space without atmospheric interference.
And the massive International Space Station in 1998. We went from simply trying to get hardware to space to building permanent shared infrastructure up there. It moved away from strict Cold War rivalry toward international cooperation.
But now we're in the fourth era, the era of new space and mega constellations. And the shift in scale is wild. We've gone from building the sprawling ISS to standardizing tiny CubeSats. Universities can now launch hardware the size of a loaf of bread.
The miniaturization is astounding. And it's completely flipped the orbital model. Instead of relying on a few massive satellites in that high-latency geostationary orbit, modern companies are utilizing low Earth orbit, or LEO.
Right, like SpaceX's Starlink launches starting in 2019. They're solving that latency issue by putting the satellites much closer to Earth.
But the trade-off is that you need thousands of them to maintain global internet coverage. You trade distance for volume, which brings an unprecedented level of complexity.
Because of the traffic.
Exactly. When you have a mega constellation of thousands of fast-moving objects in LEO, you're relying heavily on automated collision avoidance systems just to manage the space.
So what does this all mean? Well, looking at the recent industry reports, it means the sky is getting unbelievably crowded. We're currently sitting at over 9,000 active satellites in orbit.
This raises an important question regarding sustainability. With that sheer volume of hardware circling the globe, managing space junk and preventing cascading orbital collisions isn't just a hypothetical anymore. It is the single most pressing technical challenge of this crowded new era.
It is definitely a precarious balancing act up there. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the invisible infrastructure, keeping our modern world connected.
It's been great exploring this with you.
Before we go, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. With satellites now shrinking to the size of a bread loaf and launching by the absolute thousands, who ultimately governs and polices all that invisible real estate just outside our atmosphere. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we have a mission tailored specifically for you. We are unpacking the March 5th, 2026 Satellite and Space Update to explore how the cosmos is rapidly evolving into a bustling economic and technological hub.
And it is evolving incredibly fast.
Okay, let's unpack this because the sheer pace of launches is just relentless right now. Take SpaceX's bicoastal doubleheader on March 1st and 2nd. They dropped 54 Starlink satellites using Falcon 9s from both California and Florida, practically back-to-back.
Right, and they aren't even pausing to take a breath. They've got another Starlink mission dropping March 7th, and then the EchoStar 25 mission lifting off on March 9th. It's essentially a conveyor belt to orbit at this point.
Exactly, but it's not just a one-company show anymore, is it?
No, far from it. What's fascinating here is how this cadence is sparking a much wider global space race. I mean, the UK Space Agency just threw £30 million at their CLEO program.
Try to grab a slice of that global satellite communications market.
Yeah, a market that's now sitting around £40 billion.
Wow. And then there's PLD Space in Spain. They just locked down 180 million euros in Series C funding. For anyone tracking startup math, Series C means they aren't just, tinkering with prototypes in a lab anymore.
Oh, definitely not.
They are scaling up commercial production for their Mura 5 rocket for a test flight later this year. They really mean business.
Spot on. The infrastructure is maturing rapidly across the board.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room. Here's where it gets really interesting. SpaceX just floated a proposal to deploy up to 1 million satellites, and not for standard internet routing.
Right, they want to build space-based AI data centers.
It sounds like pure science fiction.
It really does, but the logic is remarkably sound. You see, Earth-bound AI data centers are massive energy hogs that overheat constantly. But in orbit, you have uninterrupted, unlimited solar energy.
And the literal vacuum of space acts as a natural zero-cost cooling system for all that processing hardware.
Exactly.
Okay, sure, the engineering logic is incredibly cool. But wait, 1 million satellites? How is that even physically possible without them constantly crashing into each other?
This raises an important question, and it's exactly what's triggering a complex debate right now. It boils down to the tension between a massive technological leap processing heavy AI data in orbit without terrestrial bottlenecks and the physical limits of our orbital environment.
Right, because 1 million new objects in low Earth orbit means the potential for orbital debris goes through the roof.
Precisely. And it's not just about space traffic. Astronomers are aggressively pushing their Dark and Quiet Skies initiative.
Oh, right, because of the light pollution.
Yes. When you have a mega constellation that dense, the solar reflectivity off the satellite chassis creates streaks of light that literally blind ground-based optical telescopes. Plus, the radio frequency bleed interferes with deep space radio astronomy.
So it's a pure standoff. The push for unprecedented tech boundaries on one side and the preservation of our orbital environment and observational capabilities on the other.
Exactly. We are watching the regulatory framework try to catch up with the physics.
Well, while we're talking about observation, let's flip the lens. Instead of looking out, a lot of this tech is looking right back down at us. The joint U.S.-French SWAT satellite just put out new data monitoring global river water levels.
Which is a great reminder that this isn't just a tech race for the sake of it. That overhead infrastructure is critical for managing Earth's actual natural resources.
Absolutely. And speaking of looking up at that infrastructure, even if you caught the total lunar eclipse that passed over early on March 3rd, the sky watching right now is top tier.
Oh, highly recommended.
When you step outside tonight, just grab binoculars. Venus is brilliant low in the west right after sunset, and Jupiter is perfectly placed all night.
And don't forget, the global astronomy community is already mobilizing for August 12th, 2026.
The big total solar eclipse.
Yep, sweeping over Greenland, Iceland, and Spain. It's a very busy sky up there.
It really is. So what does this all mean?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, space is no longer just a frontier for exploration or a backdrop for stargazing. It is a fully integrated, vital extension of Earth's infrastructure and economy.
So true. The next time you step outside to look up at Venus or spot Jupiter, remember that you are peering through a rapidly expanding invisible web of human engineering.
A very crowded web.
Exactly. And we'll leave you with this to ponder. If we are seriously proposing million satellite AI data centers today, could the physical hardware of the internet eventually move entirely off Earth? And if it does, how might that radically change who controls global data? Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah, glad to be here to get into this one.
Right, so we are unpacking the Satellite Future Report today. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore how satellites are shifting, exploring how they are moving from these niche services to becoming the primary infrastructure for global connectivity and climate management.
Which is a massive window to look at, right? The report covers roughly 2026 to 2050.
Exactly. And the sheer scale of this evolution is just wild. I mean, we were finally closing the chapter on those legacy school bus-sized platforms that...
Oh, the ones that used to cost an astronomical $20,000 a kilogram to launch.
Yeah, exactly. To these incredibly agile CubeSats riding along for under $200 a kilogram.
That launch cost collapse is really the primary catalyst here. I mean, it completely rewrites the economics of low Earth orbit, or LEO. The industry is pivoting from a slow, capital-heavy model to incredibly dynamic, rapid deployment constellations.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the report projects this explosive jump in deployment, we are going from roughly 10,000 active satellites right now to over 50,000 by 2030.
Right, and that volume isn't just for backhaul. It is chasing the holy grail of the 2026 to 2030 window, which is direct-to-device technology, D2D.
And we are not talking about specialized sat phones with giant antennas.
No, not at all. By 2028, the expectation is you will be able to stream video directly from a LEO to your standard, unmodified smartphone.
So the handoff between terrestrial cell networks and the satellite constellations will just be seamless.
Totally seamless. For you as the user, it effectively spells the end of the cellular dead zone.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sheer volume of hardware up there is only half the story. It is the capabilities of that hardware. Specifically, the rise of software-defined satellites, or SDS.
Yeah, because historically, a satellite's mission was essentially hard-coded the day it hit the vacuum. A communications relay stayed a communications relay until its orbit decayed.
But now, operators can just push an OS update from the ground.
Literally pushing a firmware patch to a rig moving 17,000 miles an hour to completely alter its coverage footprint, or even pivot its primary mission to remote sensing.
What's fascinating here is how onboard AI and edge computing changes the game. We're moving away from that old dumb pipe architecture.
Absolutely. Future payloads won't just blindly beam down terabytes of raw imagery for ground stations to process. The compute happens right there on the edge.
So if a sensor suite spots a thermal anomaly, like a wildfire, the onboard AI filters that telemetry instantly.
Exactly. It drops the noise and only downlinks the critical GPS coordinates to you, which saves immense amounts of bandwidth. And that same edge processing is being applied to climate management.
Right. We are seeing specialized environmental sentinels up there, like Methane SETI.
Providing undeniable carbon accounting, they can actively pinpoint specific greenhouse gas emitters in real time.
And the infrastructure push doesn't even stop at Earth orbit. We are extending these networks into deep space, laying the groundwork for a lunar GPS through systems like NASA's Artemis.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, adding 40,000 new assets in under a decade isn't just an engineering feat. It creates a massive congested orbit.
Which is sparking intense spectrum wars over radio frequencies.
It is. And the physical crowding is creating an entirely new economic sector. Active debris removal.
Basically, orbital garbage trucks to catch all the legacy junk.
You have to. You cannot operate a multi-billion-dollar D2D network if your primary risk factor is dead satellites from the 1990s smashing into your assets.
So, what does this all mean? Ultimately, the sky above you is transforming into a highly agile, AI-powered extension of Earth's infrastructure. It's an active layer managing your daily connectivity and climate data. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Satellite Future Report.
Before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We mentioned the rise of space data centers to handle AI workloads in orbit. Consider why.
The environment up there.
Right. Companies want to leverage the infinite vacuum of space for free cooling and endless solar energy for power. Will the ultimate, most efficient green data centers of the future actually exist entirely off-world?